So, the NFL unanimously banned the hip drop tackle this week. And I'm going to tell you why this is going to hurt the league going forward long term. Let's get into it. So, the NFL, under the auspices of player safety, under the premise of player safety, decided to ban the, and I have trouble saying the word or the phrase hip drop tackle because it sounds negative. It sounds like it has a particularly detrimental, or I guess you can say ugly connotation. Is reason why they call it the hip drop tackle, and they ultimately use that as a catalyst to get it out of the game, quote unquote. So let's get into the idea of what the hip drop tackle is, how we got here, and exactly what's going to be the ramifications of the game as in the NFL as we know it going forward. So the hip drop tackle in itself, they use the idea of swiveling and dropping your body weight, this and the third, but the idea of tackling around the waist, using your body weight, dropping it down over the person's legs and bringing them down to the ground, and ultimately, what they used as methods to get rid of the idea of this tackle was dropping your body weight on the player's legs and ultimately injuring them. When, in all honesty, even players said the idea that they didn't see uptick of injuries, and they only been tackled like this maybe once or twice in their career, i.e., Saquon Barkley, saying there was a uptick in injuries due to this tackle, and they wanted to get it out of the game. Okay, under the player safety, right? All right. Well, we'll talk about the player safety aspect of it in a minute, but I still believe that this is a farce and in an underlying way of getting more offense to be ran and more scoring to be had versus it being about player safety. But like I said, we'll get into it. And they gave a nice little presentation to the league. They cited the Mark Andrews tackle, they cited the Tony Pollard tackle, things of that nature. Guys that actually got hurt with this particular tackle, and reason why they should ultimately vote to get it out of the game. Okay, fine. But again, how do we get here? Because you have to realize that this is the fallout or domino effect when it comes down to the idea of what this tackle means or was meant to be in the league, because it was basically a fallout from the idea of what they did in rule changes they made prior to this. So what I mean by that is this: they made rules to ultimately govern the idea of tackling above the neck area or the head and shoulder area, right? So, which I ultimately truly agree with. I do believe that concussions and those head, neck injuries are a real thing, and it could be detrimental and ultimately into paralysis and all these other ugly things that you don't want to even get into. So that part I agree with. I was okay with that. I was rolling with the idea of that being a good thing in the league. So you took that part out. Okay, cool. We took that part out. Then you get into the idea of now we talking about putting in rules and implementing rules that protect defenseless players. Now that particular idea, that's where I really gave me pause, really hit me in, with a complete and utter full stop. Because I'm sitting here thinking, like, why is it, as a defender, why is it my responsibility to protect a player that's in an air quote defenseless position? And how did he get there? Typically and utterly, why they're in the defensive positions because they either put themselves there or their quarterback put them there, something of that nature. And that particular responsibility should not be on the defender players. I even heard Tom Brady say this. Tom Brady said that they've pivoted the game to the point where they have put the onus of safety on the defender versus being on the offensive players. You should be in charge of your own safety. I'm just be put it plain. You should be in charge of your own safety. It should not be on the defender's mind or psyche to have to protect you and themselves in a violent sport that we talk about when we come down to the NFL football league. It shouldn't be on the defender to protect the offensive player. I'm going to ride that train to the wheels fall off. I'm just going to tell you that right now. It should not be. And again, offensive player like Tom Brady, who's the greatest quarterback ever to play the game, even says this. So again, it holds a lot of weight with me when he says it, especially from an offensive guy's perspective versus it being a defensive guy. And then we get down to the idea of what this particularly means. What do where do we get to, and how do we come to an idea of what's legal and not legal? That's another conversation we need to have as well. But overall, like I said, what we know, the targeting rules are in place to take out head and neck contact, which I agree with. Then you get to the defenseless player ideology, and even with you leading with your shoulder, if they're in defensive position, you hit them in the shoulder to waist area, that's a foul. And to put a bow on this and put some clarity more to it, and what's the actual letter of the law, I'm going to put it in the description in this video to a link to the idea of what the rule is actually written to be. So check that out and then get in its entirety, so you get a full breakdown of what the rule actually is. But again, no defenseless player rules, head and neck area rules, one thing. Then we can do a whole conversation about the roughing the passer stuff. That's a whole nother issue. And then you get to the idea of what the area, what they call a strike zone. What is that? How can I hit you and when can I hit you is something that defensive players ultimately constantly in a fast-paced game have to worry about. Again, they make the defensive players think too much, and offensive players don't have to think at all. Again, completely and utterly slanted. So I have to worry about a fine, I have to worry about a penalty. And that's before we get to the hip drop tackle aspect of it. So we just going down the body from top to bottom. Take out the head and neck area, which again, I'm gonna have no problem with. Then you get to the torso area, which is an issue if they're air quote defenseless, and that's subjective. Then you get to the idea and the ideology of the hip drop tackle area, when again, that's around the waist, and that's trying to use your own physical body weight to bring the person down. I don't see how that's fit. I don't see how, from a science and physics perspective, that wouldn't be the case if I'm tackling around the waist. I don't see how that's ever not able to be done. I'm running at 18 to 22 miles an hour. I wrap him around his waist. The only thing I have to bring him down is my body weight, to stop his momentum. Because quite frankly, when you talk about taking out every area besides the waist and the leg area is the most powerful portion of the offensive player's body. And I have to stop that at a high rate of high force. I'm looking at a 220 pound or 260 pound tight end or halfback, respectively, and they're running 4.6, 4.4, 4.5 40s, running 22 miles an hour at me. And what am I naturally going to have to do in order to stop them? Use my God-given abilities in my body weight. But again, that's an issue because it air quote causes injuries. Whew, where are we at here? So again, when it gets down to the idea of what's legal, you look at the head and neck area, that's likely a forcible contact foul. Well, again, no problem with that area. Then you get to the shoulder to waist area, that's likely a defensive receiver foul, which is all 15 yards. Then you get to the idea of the waist area, which is likely now going to be hip drop tackle foul. So you're looking at 15-yard penalties for the head and neck area, the torso area, and the waist area. And not only that, but likely another monetary fine subsequently after that. As a defender, what do? What's the fallout from this? And I'm going to tell you, the fallout from this is simple and plain. There are likely going to be a lot of missed tackles. A lot of missed tackles. That's number one. Which the NFL is going to love, because again, that's more offensive. That's more offensive players moving down the field and more exciting plays, right? That's one thing. On top of that, if you do successfully complete a tackle, me targeting the areas that I'm allowed to, quote unquote, as a defender, you're likely going to target the upper thigh area, the knee area, the lower leg area, and around the ankle and the foot area to bring them down, especially if you're undersized. If you're not a linebacker, taking a receiver, or a running back, you're likely, as a defender, safety, or corner, going to target their lower leg area. And what's that going to mean for the defender, first and foremost? It's going to mean more separated shoulders. Because again, like I said, the idea of the legs is the most powerful and fastest moving part on their body. That's going to result in more separated shoulders, more torn pectoral muscles, more concussions, because they might not be able to get their head off the way, or get kicked or ran over and get their head knocked off because their legs are coming at them so fast. That's going to end up for the defender's part, that's going to be bad for them. And then conversely, on the offensive side, you have the offensive players, they're going to get their legs taken out, they're going to get their femurs broken, they're going to get their ACLs torn, they're going to get meniscus ruptured, they're going to get their Achilles ran over, or multiple contusions to the knee or leg, they get their lower legs broken, they're going to get their ankles snapped. So again, you trade one problem for another. because again, defensive players are not going to stop tackling because they because they can't, tackle above the waist. So they're gonna have to do something to combat this. Obviously, they get paid to do a job just like the offensive players do. So what they're gonna do? Target the lower leg area, and then that's gonna be the fallout. Because again, you're gonna miss tackles in certain cases because you can't target certain areas. And if you do make a tackle, it's gonna be the lower leg area, and it's gonna hurt the both players, offensive and defense, in different ways. Upper body injuries for the defender and lower body injuries for the offensive player. So what does that really solve? I feel like the injury is going to be ratcheted up because of this, in all honesty, based upon how the defenses are going to be forced to tackle. So that's your issue. That's your issue. Now, the overarching issue about this is this, because again, they want to paint the picture of the idea of it being about the player safety, right? That's the reasoning for it. But let's pull the curtain back. Let's get behind the weeds real quick. Let's talk about the idea that they really want to see more scoring, because the defensive scoring has been down for the past 3 years, despite all the rules that had been in place before the hip drop tackle stuff came in. So again, to me, that's not an indictment on the defensive players, or they need more regulation. You need to put the onus on the offensive players and offensive coaches to say they need to be more innovative in their scheme. They need to run better and more unique play styles, and play calling that needs to be better in order to execute offense properly. Because yet again, you have all these rules in place already besides this rule, and you're still not scoring points. Again, how entitled of a child do you need to be to get all these things handed to you and still not be able to do a job? Again, we've seen this happen. You see kids that get all the things handed to them, got all the money, got all the job opportunities and connections that they want, and he still can't seem to hold a job down. That's where we're at right now in this particular gap, in this particular outfit, and that's ugly. It really is ugly, and it's truly, to me, it's truly an indictment on the offensive players and them not getting the job done and not doing it properly. Because again, defensive players are already handicapped, and you're going to make it even more punitive to tackle above the waist. It's not looking good. It's not looking good. And to illustrate my point further, I want to play a clip by Mike Mitchell. He said this a few years ago about these targeting rules and the defensive player rules that still rings true today.
Full speed contact football, and we're not doing that. I feel like I gotta ask a guy, hey, are you ready for me to hit you right now before I hit you? And that's crazy. I'm gonna mess around and get hurt trying to protect an offensive player because he's running an over route. Your quarterback shouldn't have threw that ball messed up. That happened 2 years ago. I'm not joking at all. Andy Dalton threw a ball to Tyler Eifert 2 years ago. Tyler Eifert had to dive for it. I was aiming for his gut. But if he don't dive, he don't get in the head. That's 50 grand out of my pocket, though, because Andy throws a bad ball. Make that make sense. And at first you're taking our money, but now, I got like Matt Hasselbeck calling me a dirty player and trying my character, and we've never met before.
Hey, man, it's very hard to put it more plain than that. And that's coming from an actual NFL player. So anybody that sit on the sidelines and never played the game or just coached or actually played in a lower level, you understand that what you feel. If you feel like this is wrong, he feels the same way as the NFL player. So guess what? It's not fast a mile to believe that the NFL is making a mistake in this particular regard, and they're completely utterly favoring offense, and they still can't seem to get a job done. So again, what is the bottom line here? Where are we going with this? What is the bottom line? I really feel like the NFL is overreaching. In all honesty, they're overreaching. You can't police and make rules that are going to stop certain things in the game of football. It's just not going to be it. This is a regulated level of violence that you're having on a field on a week-to-week basis when it comes down to NFL football, right? In NFL season. It's a high level of violence. It's players that are running at the highest level of athleticism, running each other full speed. It's like a complete and utter car wreck every time somebody collides. That's where it is. I've experienced it, and trust me and believe me, it feels like a car wreck. If you've ever been in a car wreck before, that's what it feels like to make an NFL tackle in the league in any particular point in time. So you cannot regulate that but so much. So again, you're trying to make these rules to make it seem as if you're worried about player safety, but you're really not. Because again, if you really worry about player safety and not just about offense and ticket sales and generate more revenue, you wouldn't be having a game being added to the schedule, i.e. the 17th game, number one. You wouldn't be talking about the idea of having the 18th game possibly being added to number two. You wouldn't be putting games in the middle of the week where players need time to recover. You going from Saturday to Wednesday or Sunday to Thursday, or Monday to Friday. and playing games, especially later in the season when your body's banged up and you need longer and more, stretched out times in order to recover, especially if you are 21 years old. So those particular things paint a picture that you're really about the revenue and generating more and more money, not player safety. So yet again, this rule points to that same ideology that you're about trying to generate more offense and have less defense be played. And again, it's completely utterly unfair to defensive players who get paid millions of dollars to play this game and utterly look foolish because you can't do anything to offensive players at all to stop them. It's really becoming more and more punitive to stop them in any facet. So you really have to look in the mirror and say that we need to look at this from a different lens. We can't keep punishing defensive players and making it so woefully biased towards offensive players. You can't do it. You can't do it because again, that's going to end up putting a product on the field that players and people that watch the sport ultimately going to check out on, because it's going to be a clown show at some point. It's not going to look realistic. If you ever watched a wrestling match that was just completely and utterly bad, you're missing spots, botching moves, it's just completely unwatchable. And if you get to the point where you have so many egregiously missed tackles and so many injuries and the product's not good on the field, people are going to tune out. They're going to tune out. So I think that if they don't get a handle on this and they go too far in the weeds with this particular rule, that's where it's going to be. That's where it's headed. And again, that goes back to my point earlier. You really truly have to put the onus on the way it boils down to in closing. Accountability is the key. You got to put the onus on the offensive players and the offensive play callers and coaches in this league to be better and be more innovative offensively. Because if these rules are in place, you had all these rules that are going to ultimately help the offense, and you still can't score points, that's not an indictment on the defense. It's completely and utterly on the offense to get things right and get things better. Because again, that's the only way you're going to help the product holistically. Have a better product on the offensive side of the ball and stop trying to help them and push them along and give them all these advantages when you basically completely utterly crippling the other side of the ball to get that done. So NFL, I hope this isn't in a bad mood, but I'm not confident that it isn't. I'm already seeing the issue with the rules with the quarterback and how quarterbacks are getting away and escaping and extending plays more so now than they ever have, because guess what? You're not allowed to hit them. And defenders don't know what to do, so they try their best to do the least egregious thing possible, and it's not working. Quarterbacks are escaping out, they're running. You saw what Mahomes did in the playoffs. Kudos to him, but he was spun around and was in a grasp and whipped the 300-pound guy off of him and ran for a first down. It's stuff like that happens all the time because of the rules. So if you can get all that in place and you still can't score points, it's not on the defense to keep making up for these misgivings. It really isn't. So again, I hope this is not punitive, but I'm not confident it is not going to be. And if we see a rash of missed tackles and uptick in injuries for defensive players, you know why. And that's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. So we'll see how things check out. But let me know in the comments how you feel about this. Like I said, I'll leave those links for the rules in the description. Let me know how you feel in the comments about this rule and how punitive it will be or not be. And we'll keep monitoring as the season goes. But in the meantime, between time, I'm Coach Defense. Until next time, I see you when I see you. Step up and lock it down.